Welcome back to your 30 days of Dragon Paths. I am so excited to be back here to give you the Draconianism 101 complete beginner's guide. And just a little disclaimer here, the way that I practice Draconianism is completely different than anyone else, as this is a system that I have founded myself. Therefore, people who also use the term Draconianism might define it differently than I do, which is perfectly valid. But in today's episode, I'm simply here to share the system that I've learned working with my dragons over my lifetime and how I've cultivated it into the practice that I know and practice today. So if that is something that you're interested in, you're definitely going to want to stay for all 5 parts of this video, and especially check out the resources that are free on Patreon, Discord, Amino, Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, TikTok, you name it. We have all of that there in a detailed list for you in the Hatchling Clan Discord server, free for you to enjoy as a breakdown of how to really just practice this faith, okay? So it is extremely exciting because this is probably my most cherished practice within my particular path, and I am so excited to share with you guys how I have reformed traditional Draconianism, or like Draconian orders that are typically secret and based off of the clip-off, and like Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism and Kundalini and things like that, for example. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's jump into part 1 of this video, which is the Draconianism guide, and I have my notes here so I don't miss anything. So this is the path of becoming the dragon, okay? And this is about setting ourselves on rainbow dragon fire for the purpose of purification of the soul as a discipline with a focus on alchemy of spirit, as well as the dragon deities throughout world mythology. Now, that is a huge mouthful, but essentially it is very heavily tied around the practice of transmutation in a spiritual sense, as well as dragonfire, and how the different colors of the rainbow truly represent different things when it comes to dragonfire within our practice, right? And there's an infinite amount of combinations of colors too. So it's really fun to work with dragonfire, and that's like how my version of Draconianism is like truly focused on, right? Is the rainbow dragonfire. So next we have my system of Draconianism fundamentally rejects all traditional formats using the clip-off, Kabbalah, Hermetic principles, Kundalini, or defining dragon deities as like throughout history, calling them like Draconian deities, or like rejecting the fact that they are all unique dragon deities, and instead try to collapse them into like one dragon deity throughout throughout like all the different cultures, and say that, oh, because we have like Tiamat here and Leviathan there and Jormungandr there's this one like water dragon that we need to like worship and stuff, and like that that's not Draconianism. I don't even know what that is. Anyway, so next we have the main focus on spiritual transformation and transmutation with rainbow spiritual flames, fluids, and feelings. And so there's a little bit more to that, right? Like there's also like forces and faces in this as well. And I'm focusing on right now the flames, fluids, and feelings because it is like the more easy, basic way to engage with Draconianism, right? So the flames are, I would say, probably the most straightforward part of it. It's about visualizing different colors of fire, dragon fire, having dragons blow different color of fire on you, certain parts of you, in order to like transmute yourself, right? And then the fluids are like, think of like blood, saliva, like urine, things like that. Like those are going to be different types of fluids that we focus on within the body that hold a significance to like magic and power and symbolism. Like there's a huge emphasis on symbolism within Draconianism, at least the way that I practice it. And then feelings also, which is considered like emotional alchemy. We talked a little bit about this in the previous episode of Dragon Alchemy, so if you missed that, you definitely are going to want to check out the Dragon Alchemy 101 Beginner's Guide. And that's essentially kind of the fundamental of it, but then there's also forces, right? So like think of the forces of like push and pull, and like positive, negative, neutral, like just to name a few, right? Like learning how to balance those forces together and study them is really important. And then again with faces, learning how to use faces and create faces to change ourselves. And that is like a very general overview of kind of what the Draconianism that I practice really kind of like entails, right? So alchemy of spirit is the key focal point of the craft, as it is about spiritual transformation. And that's really what I wanted to hit on in this video today, is that most Draconian like orders, whether or not like you follow like traditional Draconianism or you follow like a clip-off version or like whatever you practice, right? Like, you have to understand that the fundamental point is about transformation in a spiritual way and elevating ourselves and evolving ourselves. And for many of us, it's a healing journey. And that is, for me, like, my Draconianism is very much a healing journey, right? Especially around things like sexual assault and things that have to do with my body and my autonomy and my anatomy is very, very tied into my practice of Draconianism and transforming my spirit around that, because there's just been a lot of trauma in my life. But next we have the beliefs of Draconianism. So typically believes they can become or embody the dragon through symbolic rituals, and often believes in dragons, spirit guides, and deities. So it's very, very up to interpretation for the most part of beliefs in Draconianism, and that's kind of the fun part about it, is that every Draconian is going to have a different belief system. It's just the way it is. And then next we have practice, which is typically performs high magic rituals with dragon symbolism, using rainbow dragon fire, alchemy of spirit, dancing with dragons, and the body to bring about transformation, healing, and evolution. And that's really like the key fundamental focus here of Draconianism, at least in the way that I practice it. It is like considered the highest form of like ritual magic that I practice in my personal craft, and for many Draconians it's also the same. And then next we have purpose, which is typically the purpose of Draconianism is personal freedom, evolution, and spiritual healing. Again, there is a huge emphasis in Draconianism on self-worship for some people. I personally do not recommend that. I think that it causes a lot of mental health disorders, and I've seen just anyone who worships themselves just go it's really sad to watch them just like spiral. But if you're interested in that, do be careful. Do find an anchor to your reality so you don't lose your grasp on where you stand in relation to everything else. But the reality is every single Draconian is going to have their own unique purpose, and that's totally understandable. So next we have how to start, which is by my practice of Draconianism, I have the Charge of the Rainbow Flames initiation ritual, but any initiation ritual will do. And Draconianism is typically an initiation practice, or like a practice that you initiate yourselves into. And I will be sharing my Charge of the Rainbow Flames here on my channel soon, and I will probably be giving it to Patreon first, like patrons first. So if you're interested in checking out my Patreon, we're going to be doing some renovations over there for October, so you're definitely going to want to go check it out if you have not already. But that is it for part 1 of this video. Now we're going to go into part 2. So I have my Draconianism notes, and this is basically what makes my system of Draconianism unique to my personal practice outside of other paths, right? So number 1, we have more than anything, what makes Draconianism unique from like Draconian orders, like traditional Draconianism, is that it acknowledges that like Draconian branch of left-hand systems is like new, like earliest roots to like Draco law. Let me do my best to like explain that, because all I'm trying to say is that my form of Draconianism is the only one that sincerely acknowledges that it is a new age path. I have not seen any other Draconians or any other Draconian orders claim this, but it is the truth. It started in like the 80s, okay, maybe the 70s, but like it can be traced back to Aleister Crowley being kind of the origin point of modern day Draconianism as we understand it. But again, we didn't even have the word until Draco, the Athenian lawmaker, came to play with all of his brutal lawmaking. That is where the word itself comes from. All right, people who try to connect like serpent cults or like ancient serpent worship to Draconianism are culturally appropriating, because that's not Draconianism. Those are completely separate things, right? We love to study the dragon. We love to see how they've been revered and interacted with throughout like history. But again, Draconianism is a new age practice, and it's just the truth, bestie. So next we have, unlike other systems, Draconianism, as I understand it, is completely removed from the systems of the Clip-Off, Kabbalah, Kundalini, and Aleister Crowley, or his works have since, or any works that he has since influenced. This is fundamentally because those westernized occultist ideals are very heavily rooted in patriarchal thinking. There's a lot of binary thinking in that, and there's really just a lack of access for women often in those spaces, therefore I don't resonate with them. Gee, I wonder why. Okay, so next, my system exclusively focuses on self-evolution, healing, and transformation through rainbow dragon fire, rituals, alchemy of spirit, and the symbolic myths of the dragon deities all over the world. And this is like fundamentally different than any of the other like draconian orders that I have come across. The other draconian orders I've come across really focused mostly on the clip-off, and really focused like on black, like the Black Dragon Rogue, for example. Like that just really focuses on like blurring all the dragons as one, and it's just like really disrespectful. And also it's like a hidden order, so you have to be initiated into it, and they're very weird about it. And it's just, I've heard a lot of horrible things. I've heard a lot of like racist things, and like I've also heard a lot of sexist things, and it's just like, yeah, buddy. That's why I completely remove myself from those systems. Like the clip off and things like that are like ancient traditions that have nothing to do with Draconianism, and they should never be conflated with Draconianism, if you ask me personally, because again, that's cultural appropriation. And lastly, excuse me, my friends, it's really just about understanding that those practices are different. They just are, you know, like it's nothing, there's nothing wrong with that. Like they are separate outside of Draconianism, that you can practice the clip off, you can engage in those systems walking a draconian path, but it doesn't have to be like calling it Draconianism. But that's just how really truly my system is completely unique from these systems. And then next we have, I also included dragon alchemy as one of the main pillars of my system of Draconianism, and that is personally something that isn't really focused on in any of the other draconian orders that I have studied. Some of them, maybe they'll talk about like the language of like dragon alchemy, but they won't like call it that, and they won't like, they won't call it dragon alchemy, and they won't like teach it in the sense that like I understand it through like dragon elements and like planets and like, you know, zodiac dragons and like, you know, alchemical processes and things like that, right? Like that is just not how other draconians talk about dragon alchemy. So that's also how my particular system is different. And then there is a huge emphasis on the forbidden nature of the human feminine form and exploration of the human body with 2 dragon mouths and her fluids. So this is probably the most like taboo part of my practice as a draconian, and it has to do with the human form with 2 mouths, and that is just a gender neutral way of saying like a feminine body or a body that has a vagina. My Draconianism in particular is heavily focused on the anatomy of having a vagina, and some people are really uncomfortable about that. That is not my problem, okay? I talk about blood on my channel that comes out of my vagina, and if you're gonna be weird about it, you can click off, okay? Like that's not my problem. But it has nothing to do with making it inappropriate or anything like that. It has everything to do with honoring the bodies that we were given, the natural processes that we have, and especially the way that our body experiences pleasure and feelings. The feminine form has extremely been demonized, and my practice of Draconianism is about reclaiming that and holding like the feminine form as the sacred, right? Like in my practice, I completely reject any sort of masculine energy in my Draconianism. It is for like healing my SA, right? It's very much like a survivor type of craft with my dragons. And I'm not ashamed or afraid to admit this. And this is something that I do to help me feel comfortable within my womb space again and within my body after it has been forcibly taken from me many times against my will. And that can cause a lot of trauma in the body. And so my Draconianism practice is to help me release that trauma in my body using what some would consider forbidden magic. But I digress. Next, we're moving on. So lastly, we have my system of Draconianism revolves around the alchemy of the womb and exploration, pleasure, and honoring the human body with a womb as a female-centered alternative to Draconian orders. Now, most Draconian orders, they're going to use like the image of Tiamat example as the womb of the world is like a interim space. It's like a very diminished as like a part of the process, where my draconian practice is like that is the entire point of the practice, right? So like that is just how my personal understanding of Draconianism is different than any other like online traditional Draconianism or Draconian order that I've seen, and how it just is like fundamentally different. So I hope that it helps you. But next we have part 3. Okay, so now we are on the Draconianism basics, and this is how to get started within Draconianism today after this video is completed if you desire to practice it. So number 1, study the good, the bad, and the ugly within the history of how we got the word Draconian and Draconianism, along with the occult left-hand path ideologies and orders that eventually adopted the word to mean an extreme form of the left-handed path. So for those of you guys who don't know, Draconianism really became a term of like extreme, like the extreme side of the left-handed path, right? Like it's further than Satanism, it's further than Luciferianism, it's further than like all of those like things, right? Like someone would say it's like further than hoodoo and like voodoo and stuff like that too, right? But my whole point is that it is by many considered the most extreme left-handed path, and it's really important when you're trying to start Draconianism in any way, shape, or form, however tradition you want to follow it. It's really important to understand that history and how it actually plays into how we understand it today, right? So number 2, deep diving into the study of dragon mythology, especially the dragon deities and the cultures they come from and how their people like viewed them, right? So it's really important to study all of the different dragons that you find throughout mythology, how the people in those practices viewed them, interacted with them. Was it positive? Was it negative? Was it neutral? It just is really good to know and understand these things, because these mythologies, these cultural practices around dragons are really critical to how we understand and interpret them today. And also, we're trying to connect with these dragons and having these like ancient mythology, like ancient myths, right? Like these myths help us understand fundamentally like how to better connect with these certain types of dragon deities that we would just never have any understanding of without their myths being documented. So that's why it's so very important to know about them. So number 3, we have studying the occult and esoteric histories and the ancient practices or symbolisms that echo it. And this is really important for Draconianism. This is considered like, again, like a left-handed path by the terms of like being like dark, in the sense of like it's going to involve things that are considered usually to most people like black magic. I hate using that term, but I use it so people understand what I'm talking about. Basically like baneful magic, or need some forms of like taboo magic, like sacrifice magic or blood magic or sex magic or death magic, like these things, right? Like that is just something that it's really important to understand and do your history about it, do your like research on the history about it, and also just understanding where these symbols come from. You know, it's good to know what symbols you're using and where they come from, because you don't want to just be using things you don't understand. So it's really important in Draconianism because this is a very advanced craft. So number 4, I personally recommend not engaging with the path of Draconianism without first having some sort of bond to a dragon guardian or deity prior, as well as cultivating experience within high magic and symbolic rituals, as well as familiar with fire and blood safety. And I know that seems like a mouthful, but let me break it down for you guys. In Draconianism, you will likely end up engaging with blood magic at some point, and you will also likely engage with fire magic at some point, and you need to understand how to do that safely. Do your research, okay? Because otherwise you can really hurt yourself and you can get really sick. And next we have, we have to make sure that, I mean, some people will start practicing Draconianism or following a Draconian tradition without a dragon guardian. I really think it's unwise. I find most people who really, just crash and burn really fast in Draconianism when they first start are the people who start without having that bond already established with the dragon, which is why I just recommend making sure that you're really close with the dragon before you try and like start Draconianism, okay? Like it's just common sense if you ask me. But then lastly, I think it's just really important to remember that it's really like it's a lot to learn high magic out of nowhere, which is why like I recommend before people practice Draconianism that they get experience in symbolic rituals that have a lot of steps to it, like high ceremony magic, just because I mean, at least the Draconianism I teach is like very much about that kind of magic, but not everybody is, so it just depends who you are, right? And then next we have 5, assess your level of religious trauma and any sexual trauma you might have, as Draconianism is all about exploration of all that is forbidden in the shadows. That is something that I also really need to encourage people to understand. Like, you should not be practicing Draconianism if you have some sort of like vendetta against religions. Like, you need to understand that like your religious trauma is your personal like responsibility to fix. I know you weren't at fault for receiving the religious trauma, likely because it happened in childhood, but like, bestie, like, you have to fix that shit. You also have to understand if you have any sort of like sexual trauma, like, this path will trigger you. Like, but that's kind of the point for some people. Like, for me, the point of this path is to work through my triggers, work through my trauma that's still stored within my body. That is my practice of Draconianism. It is not like that for everybody else, and that is totally okay. Right? But this is why I will heavily warn people before they practice Draconianism, because if you're not ready to face those shadows, if you don't have the tools or the idea or a like mentality to face these kinds of really heavy truths, really heavy memories, things like that, you can very easily corrupt your soul. You can very easily slip into spiritual psychosis, and you can very easily have a break where you just like completely reject all of witchcraft, and you're like, oh my god, Jesus is king, like, in the name of like, ban you in the blood of Jesus or something. I don't know what they say, but like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's really important to make sure that you have like a good mental health situation going for yourself. And then number 6, we have become comfortable with contemplating death and loss. So that is pretty straightforward. I'm going to need you guys to understand that Draconianism is a practice of dying over and over and over and over and over again, and it's about losing a lot of things over and over and over again. So if you're not comfortable with that, Draconianism probably is not for you. And then number 7, when one is ready, it is typical to self or group initiate. Like, some people will actually be initiated by like a group or something like that, but some people will just choose to self-initiate. And I was somebody who chose to self-initiate when I was 13 with my dragon guardians, not necessarily knowing what it was, right? But it was just based on the rainbow fire that I'm talking about. So moving forward, we have part 4 now. So we're going to talk about Draconianism for all, and just pretty much like any faith, no matter like what you believe in, this is how Draconianism might look like for you. So the following are examples of how Draconianism might look like for different belief systems. So if you are atheist, for those who don't believe in a higher power, typically Draconians practice self-deification or self-worship. However, it is also common for some, if not many, Draconians to engage with dragons as symbolism and like sigils rather than spiritual entities, right? So they just don't believe that the dragons are like real in like a spiritual sense, like as a higher power, right? So that's what a Draconianism might look like for you if you're atheist. But next, if you're polytheist, for those who believe in multiple divine creative forces, then Draconianism might look like working with many gods to transmute the soul in dragon fire and spiritual alchemy, and or may worship multiple dragons in symbolic rituals. Now, this is probably, at least in my experience with like meeting Draconians, most Draconians I know are polytheistic, but not all of them. Most of them, like some of them are like also atheists too. So that's what Draconianism might look like for you if you are polytheist. But if you're monotheist, for those who only believe in one divine creative force, then Draconianism may look like transmuting one's pain into power to please and glorify their Lord. But in some cases, they will believe in one god, but personified as a dragon. And it really just depends, right? Like for me personally, I worship Allah through Islam, but I don't view him as like a dragon, right? Like I view God like above creation, right? And everything else is creation. So like God is the uncreated creator and everything else is creation, and that's just like my personal practice, right? So that means all of the dragons are simply a sign of God, right? But for some people, that's just not how it resonates, which is, again, like just how cool it is that Draconianism can be so adaptable to anyone of any faith. So if you're monotheist, that's what Draconianism might look like for you. But if you are an omnist, for those who believe in all religions and faiths having truth, then Draconianism might look like finding the dragon fire in all faiths of the world. And I love this so much because people think it's silly, right? But if you engage with like religious dragons in the sense of like a Christian dragon or a Muslim dragon or a Jewish dragon or a Hindu dragon, or like in the sense of like the religion itself, like as a dragon, it's very fascinating because you'll be able to dissect the symbolism of said religion in a very like visual way. At least this is how it works for me, right? And that's how you can find the dragon fire and like all of these practices, right? So that's what Draconianism might look like if you are an omnist. But if you're an amnist, for those who believe that all of creation in existence has consciousness or a spirit, then Draconianism might look like discovering the symbolic qualities of dragonfire and even a blink dragon. So that's something that I absolutely love to still practice in my personal practice. I find dragons in all things. So like there's a dragon in the keffiyeh, there's a dragon in the crown, there's a dragon in the horns, there's a dragon in my sandals, like there's a dragon in everything. And this is how just I personally perceive reality and engage with reality. I tie the symbols of a house to the symbols of a dragon, and then I cross-reference what that means, right? And then I work with that spiritual energy and that spiritual dragon as like a vision or as like a visualization. And then they set me on dragonfire, and then I study what that color of dragonfire looks like, because some dragons have layers and layers of color. Yeah, it's not rainbow, but it's like there's layers of color. It's intentional. They mean things, right? Like color theory is real. So that is just kind of my personal takeaway from that, if you will. But that's what Draconianism might look like if you're amnist. And that is it for part 4. And lastly, we have part 5 of my Draconianism tips. So these are my best tips, tricks, and reminders for the path of Draconianism, how to stay on and how to get back on if you think that you have fallen off the path. So we have most important thing to remember when it comes to Draconianism is not culturally appropriating or taking all deities from different cultures with similar themes and making them all, like mashing them all together as one entity. And we must be cautious of taking ancient figures and reimagining them or remaking them into whatever we need them to be within practice. And all I'm trying to say here is the best way to avoid doing this is to study the mythology of dragons and to only work with them symbolically in ritual, like as a good place to start if you're just really not sure how to, navigate that at first. But ultimately, just don't take anything from a different culture and completely change it to match your own narrative. That's incredibly important to remember. And then next, remember, do not shy away from the various taboo crafts and complex feelings that arise within this practice. And that is probably my very most important tip of this entire video, is to allow yourself to feel your feelings, allow yourself to be uncomfortable, allow yourself to cry, to grieve, to get angry. You're gonna have to let yourself explore your shadow. Like that is the purpose of this practice, is to become the light in your own darkness. And the only way to become the light in your own darkness is to turn out the lights. Okay? All right. Next, we have study the symbolism of body fluids, feelings, and functions, and how they all can be engaged with to better help us tap into our energy, right? Like the life force, the draconic current. Some will call it the draconian current, right? And all that means is it's just like the energy that flows through everything that interconnects all of creation. It's how everything is interconnected. And if you ask me, this draconian current is just one long serpentine dragon weaving in and out of all of creation. But that's just how I understand it. And then next we have traditional Draconianism is Traditional Draconianism is the secretive occult orders that stem from Aleister Crowley. The practice of Draconianism is a New Age practice that originated with Aleister Crowley and Kenneth Grant. There is no archaeological evidence to support Draconianism being an ancient tradition stemming from ancient serpent cults. Again, people who say that Draconianism is 100,000 years old or dragon worship is 100,000 years old, no, it's not. There's no archaeological evidence for that. And also, there's some people who say that traditional Draconianism is again an ancient practice. It's an ancient revival, we're reviving an ancient practice or tradition. No, we're not. It's a New Age movement about magic and dragons, and there's a bunch of different variations of what that looks like. So it's a huge part of Western occultism and can almost directly be traced back to Aleister Crowley and can be directly traced back to Kenneth Grant. So moving forward, we have understanding we are ultimately responsible for the way we embody our dragon fire and each of our highest state. and reach our highest state, excuse me. So you have to understand that everything in reality in terms of Draconianism is your responsibility. That means it's your fault, bestie, not in a bad way, but it just means like even shit that's happening a country away is still your fault, because there's something happening within you that mirrors that directly, as within so without. And so that's kind of like what I'm trying to kind of illustrate here. It's about shifting your mentality to being grateful for every experience that you have, because then you're going to be able to understand how you can improve yourself to avoid certain things in the future, right? And lastly, many Draconians express having a regular initiation into the practice beneficial to staying in alignment. All that means is that many Draconians will either pick the day that they initially initiated themselves into their practice, or have like a special day. Some do it on like Samhain, for example, where they just reinitiate themselves into their Draconian path. And it's like something that they do ritualistically every year. Some people do it like every full moon, things like that. It just really depends who you're talking to. But most Draconians that I know do something like this because it helps them stay on their path and their practice, and it helps them remind themselves like where they're going and like what the purpose of their craft is. So ultimately, that's all I have for you guys for my Draconianism video. I just wanted to thank everybody so much for being so patient and me getting back to you. We will be like kind of like spamming this channel, catching up with all of these Dragon Path videos, so just please enjoy yourselves and let us know if there's a particular Dragon Path you want me to cover in the comments below. You're not going to want to miss all of these extra like goodies and like ritual stuff that I have for you guys in terms of how to practice Draconianism. But if you want to learn about the notes that I was reading from in this video, they'll be free for you on my Patreon. And again, all the free resources will be on Patreon, YouTube, Discord, Tumblr, Facebook, all of it. And the breakdown will be in the Hatchling Clan Discord. And that'll be the first link for you in the description down below. So you're definitely going to want to join us. I really would just love to have you there. We love dragons, we love you, and we just want to have fun, okay? It's just so much fun. But if you're new here, thank you so much for spending some of your day with me today. I couldn't do this without you guys. Like, this is my favorite part of my life, and because of you guys, like, you guys have made my dreams come true, like, for real. So thank you guys for choosing to subscribe and click on my videos and support me no matter what happens, because like I just love making content for you guys. So assalamu alaikum, marry me, and welcome back to your daily dose of DragonFaether. I'm Azura DragonFaether, the Draconic Priestess, and I've been working with dragons since the 90s, here to share my experience with you and all of my systems that I've created working with them along the way. So I can't wait to see you tomorrow, but until next time, stay geeky, cheeky, and freaky, little hatchling. I somehow got cut off at the end. Oh no! Please follow me so I don't get lost. Cut off is supposed to be
We'll see you back next time for your DDODF, and like, comment, subscribe for your DDODF. And if you didn't get enough, make sure to check down below to see what I'm up to and be in the know. So stay geeky and cheeky and freaky, little hatchlings. Stay geeky and cheeky and freaky just for